Hey, everybody. Welcome to Your Money Map, sponsored by Limra's Alliance for Lifetime Income. I'm your host, Jean Chatsky. Glad to have you with us today. At age 52, my guest today, Julie Wainwright, was told she was unemployable. But instead of accepting that as the end of her story, she decided to rewrite it, going on to found The Real Real, a luxury consignment platform that would disrupt the fashion industry and become a $1 billion business. On today's episode, Julie is going to share the incredible story behind her comeback and what she learned along the way about resilience, reinvention, and the power of starting over. She'll also tell us about the new book, which is called Time to Get Real: How I Built a $1 billion Business That Rocked the Fashion Industry. It offers an unfiltered look at the sometimes messy realities of leadership. And we'll talk about the challenges of starting something new later in life, the surprising advantages that come with age, and her advice for anyone ready to chart their own path. So if you're facing a big life change, thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, or just need a reminder that it is never too late to reinvent yourself, this show's for you. If you've got questions for Julie, just drop them in the comments. We will do our best to get to them, whether you are with us on Facebook or on LinkedIn. Julie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. Congrats on the new book. It has been described at a look at the messy realities of leadership. What inspired you to write it, and how do you think it's different from a typical CEO success story?
Well, first of all, it was fun to recap what happened at the Real Real. And I get so many questions about the business and also about how I overcame what happened at pets.com. I decided to put it in a book that I would like to read, which is something that is honest and has sort of warts and all. If I would have read this book before I started the Real Real, I would have made different choices. So I wanted to write something that told the story, but also gave practical advice along the way and show where I made mistakes and give people other alternatives, other considerations.
That's really interesting that if you had read this book, you would have made different choices. Put a pin in that. I want to come back to it. But let's start at the beginning. You've had an extraordinary career. I know there've been some incredible highlights, but also some lowlights. You have said that the day pets.com closed marked a turning point in your life. Tell us a little bit about what you've incurred along the way.
So let's just go back. That was 25 years ago. This is the 25th year of the dot-com bust, as people call it. And pets.com was one of the first companies to shut down. There were, I think, 1,100 other companies after that that had to close their doors. I actually made the decision to shut the company down when it had a net positive work to get money back to shareholders because I didn't believe I was going to be able to get my next round of financing. And we needed another $100 million to get to profitability. And back then, way back then, there were about 200 million people on the internet. So it was so early. By the way, I don't think it was smart of me to shut the business down in hindsight, although the investors did appreciate it because the early investors still made money. But why I don't think it was smart is no one can predict the future. I really should have taken it as far as I could take it. Now, it turns out I was right. The financing market did collapse, but I could have been wrong. There's no crystal ball here. Anyway, once that happened, pets.com became a poster child for a dot-com crash. And it was something that loomed large in my career, really until I had another success, which took years. But it was hard for me to get another job. This is, by the way, after I had had two successful exits as a CEO. So I had one failure, and it was incredibly hard to get another job in tech. And because the pets.com puppet and the company was referenced regularly as a dot-com implosion symbol, it actually sort of was like a dark cloud around me.
Yeah.
not, and I didn't fully recognize it until a recruiter basically laid it out for me that you mentioned it for my career. He really believed my career was over.
That is, it's such there's so many interesting data points in everything that you just said. The fact that the original shareholders made money, the fact that if you look at Chewy today, you could see that pets.com, had you held on and continued to run the business as you were, would have been a success. It turned out that that was not the only thing that happened to you during that period of time. Your husband asked for a divorce. You called it a long winter. How did you get through it, both personally and professionally?
It was really hard. I would say for a long time, I let those two events define me and felt terrible about it. A- and because there was also public sort of scorn when I'd go out, people said, "Aren't you the person who was the CEO of Pets.com?" And they were angry about it because it was a symbol. Maybe they lost money, who knows? But um, it altered my personality because I became more introverted. The other thing that's unfortunate when you're in your 40s, and I was 42 when I got a divorce, it's such an odd time to get a divorce because we hadn't had kids, and we had sort of talked about it, but not really. It wasn't a priority. But then all of a sudden, you feel like, well, that's gone. That option's gone
Yeah.
as a family anyway. And um, most people are settling into their marriage, not having their marriage blow up. And maybe that happens another 10 years in their 50s or some in their 60s. But it was a weird time to have that happen. I didn't put it in the book, but my mother also died when, like, within a year, which was on one level a blessing because she was very ill, but it's still a psychic
Oh,
blow.
it's awful. Yeah.
So, you had all these things piling on. What I did to get back to my center was, well, I never stopped exercising. So that gave me an opportunity to get rid of excess energy. But being around creative people, artists, a lot of artists, I joined a couple of arts organizations. Being out in nature helped. And to be honest, time helped because I got tired of being in a funk. So I just had to say, this is not how I want to live the rest of my life. I wish I would have snapped out of it sooner. I didn't. But once I did, there was no going back.
It's so interesting. Kathleen said in the comments, "When it rains, it pours," and she's certainly right. I got divorced at 40. My father died right around that time. A lot of different negative things sort of hit all at once, and so I understand what you're talking about. But you did rebound, and you rebounded in such a big way. At a decade later, age 53, you launched The Real Real from your home. Why? And what did those early days look like?
So this is funny because I started it in my home, but I rented a small warehouse about 2,500 square feet about a month before we launched because I couldn't really pick, pack, and ship from my house, and it was definitely a starter warehouse. I mean, what I wrote about in the book, and this is true. You walked in, the entry level had, like, it felt like plastic carpet, like it crunched, like
Oh,
you're walking on cereal or something when you walked in. And it wasn't in a good neighborhood. And so I put black plastic bags, like garbage bags, on the windows and had them taped up with duct tape. And there was a sandwich shop next door that every morning would cook bacon. So it sort of smelled as like bacon inside. Anyway, we did launch from, there was like one employee that time. And we did launch from this warehouse in San Rafael. And honestly, it was exhilarating. It really was, despite the fact that it was, I mean, literally gross. People would walk in to interview and they'd take a look around and walk back out. It was also a railroad car. So the office was at the front. The photography studio was the next little room, but the photographer had to step into the toilet to take pictures.
oh my God.
And then there was a little alcove where we kept the handbags and shoes and the accountant's desk in huge container store containers. So it would get hot and they would start leaning because it was hot and they didn't have any structure holding them up. And then the back end was for garments and boxes and pick, pack, and ship with a roller door out. So it worked. It did what it was supposed to do. But there's something about getting that gritty and getting down to the basics that felt very pure and real. And honestly, I was financing it. So it was also what I could afford at the time. And the risk I was, willing to take. Having said that, our first sale, we sold everything out really quickly and did $30,000 the first day. And I'm like, this is it. We're on to something. I knew it right away.
You did this at a point, you're in your 50s. A lot of people are winding down their careers or just thinking about starting to wind down, and you are just gearing back up again. Did you find um, ageism, biases against people who thought, what are you doing?
Well, look, I decided to raise venture capital. So I would say I'm not sure what got me the most. The fact that a lot of the people I was meeting with, I was old enough to be their mother, or the fact that I had had pets.com in my background. Probably the combo was fairly detrimental. And the first person that invested was a woman because she understood the business and was already using the business. I didn't even attempt to raise venture capital funds for 1 year after the launch. And we were already at $10 million in sales then. And I knew where we were going, but I knew that, yes, I was, a woman over 50, but I also had pets.com in my background. No one was going to give me seed funding except people I knew, and they did. But after that, I needed capital to go forward. And luckily, I met a woman named Maha Ibrahim at Canaan who understood the business, understood what we were trying to do, and loved the business.
As you speak to other women entrepreneurs who face those very same challenges when it comes to raising capital or even just starting their own businesses, hanging out their own shingles, what would you tell them about going into it at that point in your life?
So, first of all, there's many good things about it. If you're healthy and have high energy, which I was and am still, you can let most of the things that might rattle you in your 20s or 30s or even 40s slip away. So I would say you have more knowledge. Hopefully you're not dealing with roller coaster life. Your life should be, you understand how to maneuver through the good and the bad in life. Um, Chances are you're much more strategic, you're much more to the point. So your focus is clearer about what you need to do. And hopefully you have a good sense of humor by then, because no matter what business you start, you really need a good sense of humor because things always go wrong. And you won't let the things that go wrong actually deter you from the possibility of what can go right. And that is in my experience, a learned behavior. I know men are more confident in many ways than women when they start it, but even then, no one's that confident when they start a business. But once you recognize what you can control, how you can problem solve, what you can do to move forward, and you know how to look for what success looks like, the other stuff that goes wrong every day, and things always go wrong, you can just like, okay, it went wrong, we'll fix it, or this is fixable, and you can just move forward. The maturity is really great. And then hopefully, although women do have a bigger burden than most, hopefully you aren't you don't have sick parents that you need to take care of, and hopefully your children are self-sufficient. I would say the beauty is, if you know what you want to do, age, and you've got the energy to do it and the inclination, age shouldn't come into it. I think you just have to, your values have to be aligned with what you want to do. Is it the right time in your life? but I did find it easier in my 50s than I did probably in my 20s. I know for a fact in my 20s and 30s.
Let me come back to the question that I put a pin in earlier. You said when you wrote the book that you saw a lot of mistakes that you would have made, or a lot of things that you would have done differently had you read this book. What would you have done differently?
Um, I I think the biggest mistake I made is once my venture board got off. So we took the company public. The venture people that came into the company, some people had had their money in there 8 years. They wanted to get off the board so they could sell their stock without being under SEC regulations. So I recommended other board members that were approved. And those board members had never experienced a high growth company before, had no idea what an entrepreneurial journey is like. And these are so obvious. Were not necessarily, one of them was had a technical background, but most of them didn't have a technical background. And therefore, they really, they had a different way of thinking that was more conventional, that didn't map to the business or the way the business was doing business, because we were not a conventional company and they had never seen a high growth situation. Like I said, there were two people on the board that had, one wasn't really operational. The other one was and was useful, but then there were four other people, including the last money in guy, who had no idea. And he didn't get his money out. The last money in guy didn't resign like a smart person and sell his stock. So it set so these people were new, and then we had COVID hit. So it set up this disconnect between what I had to do as the CEO. And by the way, it didn't even occur to me that this we were so misaligned, that they had no idea of anything that I just laid out. They really had never experienced it. So it's almost like we were speaking a different language, because if I would say, this, they wouldn't hear it that way because
Hmm.
they never even understood it. And I think the other thing is the Real was and still is incredibly analytically driven, with great databases and really driven through a lot of analysis, and everything was measured. That is not normal in other more traditional older school ways of business. They're just not data and technology driven. So, it was just, it really, we were speaking a different language. And where that didn't serve me was when the stock fell and the one board member, the PE guy, who didn't get off the board to sell his stock, got nervous and thought he could solve the problems. He came after me, and I
Yeah.
didn't even know it was happening. And they were all happy to go along with him because things looked pretty crazy during COVID and the next year out. So I would say I set the board the I set myself up to fail. Now, look, if we wouldn't have had COVID, my bet is it wouldn't have happened. But, things never go that well. So I would say values weren't aligned on the board, experiences weren't aligned. And I was naive and not understanding that we didn't even speak the same language. Consequently, they put in someone after me in the so
Let
I
me
was
just
let
let
go.
me
So
just
I
pause
was
you a sec.
fired.
Right
Yeah,
there, you were fired from
I
this
was
company
fired.
that you started, which must have been devastating.
Oh, it was absolutely devastating. Now, I say in the book I didn't help myself because, you know, people just don't like to see a woman get mad and have anger. And I did. I lost it in a board meeting and I was relentless. So I didn't help myself because I couldn't believe lies were being told about me. And I was just trying to work the company through. Um, so that was unfortunate. It was devastating. What was worse was the person they put in after me, who was, in my opinion, completely unqualified to never run a public company. Again, was more of an old school person, and he didn't last long. The good news is he didn't last long. And the person who was the first employee, who was the president of the company, is now the CEO, and she's great. And that's who my heir apparent would have been. And I was moving toward, I had given her every with the board's approval, but she was so capable. She had everything except the CFO, HR, and sales reporting to her. So she was running operations, and it's just amazing. That's Rati Levesque. But look, I think, people get fired from companies all the time. Women sadly get fired. Very few women founders live to say another day. But look, I took it from an idea in my kitchen to over $1 billion, and I took it public as one of the. I think I was the 23rd woman ever to take a company public, and I created a new industry and raised the awareness of sustainability. So, and I obviously didn't do it alone. I had a great team. But there you go. Things happen when it's all about, I wrote in the book, it's all about money or sex. In this case, it was probably about money. And luckily, the person that the board put in did get asked to leave. Otherwise, the company would be in trouble. In my
It,
opinion, in my opinion.
it now you get asked the question, when do you plan to retire? And you have called
Boy.
that an odd question. Why do you think why do you think it's the wrong question to be asking?
Well, it's like something from the 50s. It's something that, like, you just think of, oh, I'm going to go join a country club and play golf or something. I don't understand it. My and to be honest, my father had his own business and he never retired until he stopped working about 2 years before he passed away in his 80s. So it feels senseless. I mean, retire to what? The truth is, if you're curious and you're engaged in life and you love business, which is really fun and exciting for me, I don't really understand it. I think this is sort of a natural thing. I remember, in my 20s, I thought people in the 40s were old. And, in my 60s, I think people in the 90s are old. I bet you if I live till 90, I'll think I'm not old at all. So I do think there's just a generational gap. No one my age asks me when I want to retire, but I would say almost every single journalist that talks to me is just shocked that I'm working. And the question always comes up, don't you have enough money? I'm like, well, that isn't why it's like, that's not even a factor. I mean, for me, it's like, if I didn't love doing something, I would try to figure out something else I love doing. But working is, for me, it's creating, it's exciting, and working with a team is exciting.
Part of creating the real real for you, and I know a little bit of this story, but I'm hoping you'll share it, was emptying out your 401k to start this business. And I've heard that story so many times I can't even tell you, but often I hear it from people in their 30s, and not from people who are closer to the age at which we might want to stop working, if that is going to be a thing. How was that for you? What made you decide this is the road I'm going to go down? Would you recommend that other people make the same bet on themselves?
Um, I would never recommend what people do with their money, but I'll tell you why I did what I did. I knew. So first of all, when I started the company, I had 2 years of income in the bank. That's it, because I had gone through a messy divorce and hadn't made a lot of money between there. So I had 2 years to live on, which meant I didn't have money to invest in the company. So, because I didn't know how long it would take, and I didn't know if it failed, would I have to then sell my house? And I didn't want my back up against the wall and all things. And I had a 401k. So I made the decision to take, I mean, I took it down to like $50,000 to take that money out, to put it in the company, because especially after that very first day when we sold 30,000 items. I understood that I had a supply problem, meaning I needed more product in. I didn't have a demand problem. And that this could be a huge hit. And I also realized that venture capital would not come knocking at my door. And as much as I'd knocked, I'd have more, I'd probably get all no's until I could prove the business model. So I knew I had to invest in the company to get it to a good run rate with some predictability, even though 10 million is sort of nothing, but it's in 1 year, it's a good proof point. So it was either that or, um, lose. So I wouldn't it when we talk about it, it's sort of my heart palpitates. It didn't feel risky. It felt like a calculated risk when I look back at it. It was pretty risky. But it worked out. It all worked out. My accountant and I mean, I didn't have a lot of money, but still had a money manager. They were like, okay, everyone was taking a deep breath. Um, but anyway, so it did work out. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. But on the other hand, if you really do believe in yourself and you need capital, then I would say take calculated risk. This was a calculated risk.
As you look into your future, what's next? Is there another company that you're starting from your kitchen table? Now the last thing in your bio is not something that people are gonna shy away from.
I'll tell you what I'm doing right now. So I don't know what's next, but I'm sitting on a couple boards. One's a public company, and one is MoCA, which is the Museum of Contemporary Art and for Los Angeles, which I like. But I would say every single day I meet with entrepreneurs, almost all females, and I'm helping them or coaching them, talking to them. They're sharing their stories. Tomorrow I'm doing a site visit on an entrepreneur's business. I'm an investor in an early stage venture capital firm called Shaki. Also, Mastery, which is another really fascinating venture, a fund that's more venture, has some PE. Graycroft. So these are all people that supported me, by the way. Graycroft Fund and another fund called Volition, which is later stage. So I'm helping entrepreneurs move forward, seeing lots of deals, having great meetings. It's very enriching. And then I've been out giving talks. And and no surprise, most of the people that show up are women, and most of them really want to be entrepreneurs. And we can have honest conversations in safe places. So that's really enriching. So that's where I'm at right now. I don't want to go too far in the future because this is new. Having this kind of, I would say, a role where you're in service is new, and it's gratifying.
The women entrepreneurs in your office, if you could leave them and leave us with three pieces of advice, what would they be?
Give yourself a lot of rope. Give yourself some grace because things will go right and wrong. So do not beat yourself up because other people will do that. Learn to treat every experience as a learning experience. Be careful the people you hire. Make sure you have value sync. So values and what you hold its value and experience are really important. So when I've made recommendations for like even the board, I would say our values were misaligned. So values are really important. And the last thing is it's not over till it's over. So let's say you fail, get up, you may get up, you may not want to try something for a while. You've got time until you're in the grave. You've got time to try and try again. And oh, one last thing. Really, I just hope people laugh a lot when they make mistakes because honestly, that humor gets you through so many things. And most things, when you look at it, are sort of absurd. Let me just tell you one story, just to tell
Sure.
you. One of the, you know, the pricing's always hard and people pay a certain amount and they want, this is for used things and they want something. And I remember someone who shouldn't have answered a customer service line. The woman was really upset about the price of her used shoes. And she's the customer service person who wasn't. She was another employee said, "Lady, you're talking about used shoes. You realize that?" And it was terrible to say to someone because she was emotional. I had to hold up cue cards. But when we got off, she was upset about used shoes, which are sort of funny, when you
Yeah.
think about it, but you don't want to let the customer know that. All I know is there's more humor in things and you don't beat yourself up. And, and you know how they always say, which I hate, it's all about the journey. I hate when people say that, but it really is all about the journey.
My sister-in-law, who is a fabrics designer, wants to make t-shirts that say "F you and your journey." So you can work with her on those.
I would wear one of those, but sadly, it is about the journey.
It is, exactly. 100%. Julie, if we've got people who are looking for more information on you or on the book, where can they find that?
So the book Time to Get Real is available at Barnes and Noble, Amazon, and some bookstores. For me, I'm on Instagram at RealRealJulie. And you can email me at julie@shopkeyvc.com. That's spelled SHAKTIVC.com. And that is an early stage seed investment company that I'm helping with and an investor in.
I love it so much. Thank you so much. Whether you are continuing to work late in life or thinking of starting your own business, or you just want tips on improving your financial security as you age, be sure to check out the resources available on LIMRA's Alliance for Lifetime Income website. It's protectedincome.org. While you're there, please be sure to sign up for our newsletter. You can do that at protected.income. Protectedincome.org/subscribe. Julie, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thank you.
And thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.